The transport ship descended through the purple clouds of Cathara Prime, and Lihana pressed her face against the window like a child seeing snow for the first time. Below her, massive towers of dark stone stretched toward the sky, connected by bridges that seemed to float in the air. This was the homeworld of the Velkari, one of the most powerful species in the galaxy. Hana was nervous. She had been chosen for this mission because of her work with alien biology and her friendly personality. But she knew the truth. Humans were new to the Galactic Coalition. Most species still saw them as weak and strange. The Velkari especially had a reputation for looking down on softer species. The ship landed on a platform near the Grand Palace. When the door opened, Hana grabbed her small bag and stepped out. The air was thinner here than on Earth, and it smelled like metal and something sweet she couldn't identify. A group of Velkari warriors waited for her. They were tall, much taller than any human, with bodies covered in short fur that ranged from deep black to silver gray. Their faces reminded Hana of big cats with sharp golden eyes and ears that moved to track every sound. They wore dark armor that seemed to absorb light. The leader stepped forward. His fur was almost completely black, with streaks of silver at his temples. His eyes were cold. "I am Commander Raka," he said. His voice was deep and rough. "You are the human diplomat?" Hana tried to smile and hold out her hand for a handshake. "Yes, I'm Lihana. It's an honor to—" Raka stared at her hand but didn't take it. The other warriors behind him made a sound that might have been a laugh or a growl. Hana felt her face grow hot. She pulled her hand back. "Follow," Raka said, turning away. They walked through corridors of black stone. Everything here was huge, built for people much larger than humans. Hana had to take quick steps to keep up. The warriors didn't speak to her or to each other. Their boots made sharp sounds on the floor. Finally, they reached a room with a large door. Raka gestured inside. "Your quarters. You will stay here during the negotiations. Do not wander the palace alone. Many areas are forbidden to outsiders." Hana nodded. "I understand." "Thank you, Commander." Raka's eyes narrowed. "Humans," he said slowly, "are soft. You cry easily. You form bonds with anything that moves. You lack discipline." He leaned closer. "I do not believe your species is ready for the coalition. These negotiations will prove me right or wrong." Before Hana could respond, he turned and left. The other warriors followed. The door closed behind them with a heavy sound. Hana stood alone in the enormous room. The bed was 3 times too large for her. The ceiling was so high it made her feel tiny. She sat on the edge of the bed and took a deep breath. This was going to be harder than she thought. The first day of negotiations was exhausting. Hana sat in a cold stone room with 5 Velkari officials who asked her questions for hours. They wanted to know about Earth's military strength, resource production, and political structure. Every time Hana tried to talk about cultural exchange or friendship between species, they looked bored. By the evening, her head hurt and her throat was dry from talking. She returned to her quarters and collapsed on the too large bed. She was so tired she could barely think. That's when she heard it. A small sound like crying came through the ventilation system above her bed. It was faint but clear. Someone was crying. Someone young. Hana sat up and listened. The crying continued, soft and sad. It tugged at something in her chest. She had a younger brother back on Earth, and she recognized the sound of a scared child. She tried to ignore it. This wasn't her home. She was told not to wander. But the crying didn't stop. On the second day, the negotiations were even worse. Commander Raka joined the meetings and challenged everything Hana said. He called human emotions a weakness. He said humans would break under the pressure of real galactic politics. Hana kept her voice calm, but inside she was frustrated. She explained that emotions helped humans understand each other, that empathy made them good at solving conflicts, that caring about others wasn't the same as being weak. Raka just smiled, cold and sharp. "Words are easy," he said. "Let us see how you handle the real tests." That night, Hana heard the crying again. This time it was louder, more desperate. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening. Her heart hurt. Whoever was crying sounded so alone. On the third night, Hana couldn't take it anymore. The negotiations had been brutal. Raka had spent 2 hours listing all the ways humans had failed in their first contact with other species. Hana was exhausted, frustrated, and homesick. When she heard the crying start again, something inside her broke. She got out of bed and opened her door carefully. The corridor was dark and empty. She followed the sound, moving quietly through the shadows. The palace was like a maze, but the crying guided her. She found a side door that led to a small garden. The garden was surrounded by high walls and filled with strange plants that glowed softly in the dark. Rain was starting to fall and lightning flashed across the sky. In the corner of the garden, huddled under a stone bench, were 3 small shapes. Hana moved closer and gasped. They were Velkhari cubs. They looked like tiny versions of the adult warriors with oversized ears and big eyes. Their fur was soaked from the rain and they were shaking. The cubs stared at her with wide, frightened eyes. One of them, the smallest, was crying. The sound Hana had been hearing for 3 nights. "Hey," Hana said softly. She knelt down, making herself smaller. "It's okay. Don't be scared." The cubs pressed closer together. Thunder crashed overhead and all 3 of them jumped. The smallest one started crying harder. Hana's heart broke. She didn't know anything about Velkhari culture or rules. She just saw 3 scared children in a storm. She did what felt natural. She took off her jacket and crawled under the bench with them. "Shh," she whispered. "It's just a storm. It's loud, but it can't hurt you here." She wrapped the jacket around the smallest cub. The cub looked up at her with huge golden eyes full of tears. Slowly, carefully, it leaned against her arm. Hana smiled. She started humming a song her mother used to sing to her during storms. The other 2 cubs watched her. Then one by one they moved closer. Before long, all 3 cubs were pressed against her, warm and soft. Their crying stopped. They made a gentle rumbling sound like purring. Hana felt her eyes getting heavy. She was so tired. The cubs were warm. The rain was soothing. She told herself she'd just rest for a minute. She didn't mean to fall asleep. But exhaustion pulled her down, and soon she was dreaming of home, unaware that she had just done something that would change everything. While Hana slept peacefully in the garden with 3 cubs curled against her, the Grand Palace was in chaos. Captain Woojin of the Shadowclaw Guard stood in the empty nursery, staring at 3 small beds. His hands were shaking. Behind him, 6 of his best warriors searched every corner of the room for the 3rd time, but they all knew the truth. The royal cubs were gone. "Captain," said Lieutenant Jihoon, his voice tight with fear, "we've searched the entire wing. They're not here." Woojin closed his eyes. This was his worst nightmare. 3 months ago, he had been given the greatest honor of his life, to protect the royal cubs after their parents died in battle. For 3 months, he had devoted every moment to keeping them safe, and now they were missing. "Seal the palace," Woojin ordered. His voice was steady, but inside he was screaming. "No one enters or leaves. Search every room, every corridor, every closet. Find them." The warriors saluted and ran from the room. Woojin stood alone in the silence. He knew what would happen if the cubs were harmed. The Shadowclaw Guard would be executed, all of them. It was the law, but that wasn't what scared him most. What scared him was the thought of those 3 small cubs, frightened and alone somewhere in the massive palace. He had failed them. Private Minho ran through the East Wing, checking every room. He was the youngest member of the guard, barely 20 cycles old. This was his first important assignment, and it was turning into a disaster. The storm outside was getting worse. Lightning lit up the windows and thunder shook the walls. Minho thought about the cubs and felt sick. They were terrified of storms. Every night for the past 3 months they had cried when it rained. That was the worst part. The crying. Every single night since their parents died, the cubs cried. They cried for hours. Nothing the guard did could comfort them. Woojin had tried everything. He'd brought them toys, special food, and soft blankets. He'd assigned warriors to stay with them at all times. Nothing worked. The cubs would look at the warriors with those big, sad eyes and cry, and the warriors, trained to face any enemy without fear, stood helpless. They didn't know how to stop the crying. They didn't know how to make the cubs feel safe. It was breaking them all apart. Minho checked the library, the storage rooms, and the meditation hall. Nothing. He was about to move to the next section when he heard Commander Raka's voice echoing through the corridor. "Find them now!" Minho ran faster. In the command center, Commander Raka was watching screens that showed different parts of the palace. Every available warrior was searching. They had been searching for 2 hours. Raka's claws dug into the edge of the table. He had sent a message to the High Council, informing them of the situation. They would arrive at dawn to pass judgment. If the cubs weren't found safe by then, The entire Shadowclaw Guard would face execution. That was the law. The cubs were the future of the royal line. Their safety was more important than anything. But Raka wasn't thinking about the law. He was thinking about Wu Jin. Wu Jin was the best warrior Raka had ever trained. Strong, honorable, and completely dedicated. When the cubs' parents died, Wu Jin had volunteered to lead their guard. He had sworn to protect them with his life, and now he would die because of this failure. Raka slammed his fist on the table. On one of the screens he could see Wu Jin searching the gardens. Even from here, Raka could see his former student was barely holding himself together. Captain Wu Jin moved through the rain, checking behind every plant and statue in the main gardens. His fur was soaked, water dripped into his eyes. He didn't care. Behind him, Lieutenant Ji-hoon was searching the western section. Ji-hoon was his oldest friend. They had trained together as cubs. Ji-hoon had 3 cubs of his own. He understood what it meant to protect the young. Wu Jin, Ji-hoon called out. The Eastern Garden. Have we checked there? Wu Jin's ears went up. The Eastern Garden. It was small, rarely used. The cubs liked to play there sometimes because it was quiet. With me, Wu Jin said, and they ran. They reached the door to the Eastern Garden, just as Private Minho arrived from the other direction. All 3 warriors stopped at the entrance. I'll search it, Minho said quickly. He was the youngest. If something bad had happened to the cubs, it should be him who found them first. Not his captain, Wu Jin nodded. Minho took a deep breath and stepped into the garden. The rain had stopped, but water dripped from the glowing plants. Minho walked slowly, looking behind every bush. His heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Then he saw the stone bench in the corner. And under it, in the shadows, he saw something that made him freeze in place. A human. The human diplomat, Lee Hana. She was sleeping under the bench, sitting with her back against the wall and in her arms. Curled against her chest and sides were all 3 royal cubs. Minho couldn't breathe. He couldn't move. His mind was trying to understand what he was seeing, but it didn't make sense. The cubs were sleeping. Not crying. Not scared. Just sleeping peacefully against the human, making soft purring sounds. One of them, little Sola, had her tiny paw resting on Hana's hand. This was impossible. Outsiders weren't allowed near the cubs. It was forbidden. Touching the cubs without permission was a crime punishable by death. And yet here was this human. This soft, weak human that Commander Raka had mocked. Sleeping with the royal cubs like it was the most natural thing in the world. Minho's hands were shaking as he pressed the emergency signal on his communicator. Within seconds, Captain Wu Jin and Lieutenant Ji-hoon burst into the garden. They stopped when they saw what Minho was staring at. Wu Jin felt his heart drop into his stomach. Relief that the cubs were safe crashed into horror at what this meant. An outsider had touched the sacred cubs. The law was clear. This human would be executed, and the guard who had failed to protect the cubs from this contact would be executed too. Call Commander Raka, Wu Jin said quietly. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Call everyone. Within minutes, the Eastern Garden was surrounded by warriors. They stood in a circle, weapons drawn, staring at the sleeping human and cubs. No one spoke. No one knew what to say. Commander Raka arrived and pushed through the crowd. He looked at the scene and went completely still. The cubs were sleeping. Actually sleeping. He had seen them every day for 3 months, and they had never looked this peaceful. Tareen, the oldest cub, was curled against the human side. Kiva, the middle cub, had her head on the human's leg. And Sola, the smallest, was tucked under the human's jacket, barely visible. They looked comfortable. Safe. Happy. Raka felt something cold settle in his chest. By law, he should kill the human right now. She had broken the most sacred rule of Valkyrie culture. But if he woke her, if he pulled her away from the cubs, they would wake too, and they would start crying again. He couldn't do it. For the first time in his long career, Commander Raka didn't know what to do. Captain Wu Jin, he said finally. Explain this. Wu Jin stepped forward. His face was blank, but his hands were clenched into fists. I cannot, Commander. We were searching for the cubs. Private Minho found them here with the human. I don't know how long they've been here or how this happened. Raka looked at the cubs again. Taran made a soft sound in his sleep and pressed closer to Hana. The human mumbled something and her arm tightened around the cub, gentle and protective. Even in sleep, she was keeping them safe. She doesn't know, Lieutenant Ji-hoon said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at him. The human. She doesn't know our laws. She doesn't know what she's done. It was true. Hana had arrived only 3 days ago. No one had told her about the cubs or the rules surrounding them. She probably had no idea these were the royal cubs or that touching them was forbidden. She had just seen cubs in a storm and done what came naturally to her species. She had comforted them, and the cubs who had cried every night for 3 months, who had refused comfort from the best warriors in the Shadowclaw Guard, had stopped crying for her. Captain Wu Jin stared at the sleeping human. Something was building in his chest, something hot and painful. He had spent 3 months trying to help those cubs. He had stayed awake night after night listening to them cry, feeling more helpless with each passing day. His warriors had suffered with him, all of them slowly breaking under the weight of their failure. And this human, this stranger, had succeeded where they all had failed. In one night she had done what they couldn't do in 3 months. The hot feeling in his chest grew stronger. His eyes started to burn. No, he thought. No, not now. Not here, but he couldn't stop it. For the first time since he was a cub himself, Captain Wu Jin felt tears forming in his eyes. Dawn was breaking over Cathara Prime when Hana started to wake up. The first thing she noticed was that she was warm. The second thing was that something was purring against her chest. Her eyes opened slowly. For a confused moment, she didn't know where she was. Then she looked down and saw fur. Lots of fur. 3 small bodies were pressed against her, rising and falling with peaceful breathing. Memory came back in a rush. The crying. The storm. The cubs, oh no. Hana's heart started pounding. She had fallen asleep. She didn't know how long she'd been here. Slowly, carefully, she tried to look around without moving too much. She didn't want to wake the cubs. What she saw made her blood turn to ice. Warriors, dozens of them. They stood in a circle around the bench, all of them staring at her. Their weapons were drawn. Their faces were hard and angry, and in front of them all stood Commander Raka, his golden eyes fixed on her with an expression she couldn't read. Hana's mouth went dry. She had done something very, very wrong. She didn't know what, but the look on their faces told her it was serious. She started to say, but her voice came out as a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again. I can explain. Do not move, Commander Raka said. His voice was cold and flat. Do not wake the cubs, Hana froze. One of the cubs, the smallest one, shifted in her sleep and made a tiny sound. Hana automatically moved her hand to gently pat the cub's back, the way she would comfort her little brother. The cub settled back down. She heard several of the warriors make sounds of shock. Some of them took a step forward, hands tightening on their weapons. I said, do not move, Raka repeated. I'm sorry, Hana whispered. They were scared. The storm. They were crying and I just wanted to help. I didn't mean to fall asleep, Raka's eyes narrowed. You heard them crying? For 3 nights, Hana said. I heard someone crying for 3 nights. Tonight I couldn't ignore it anymore. I followed the sound and found them here. They were so scared. Something passed over Raka's face. He looked at one of the warriors, a tall one with black fur and silver streaks. The warrior was staring at Hana with an expression that looked almost like pain. Captain Wu Jin, Raka said. Your report stated the cubs were secured in the nursery before the storm. The warrior Wu Jin swallowed hard. They were, Commander. They must have escaped during the security lockdown. The doors lock from the inside during emergencies. They could open it from their side. And how long were they missing before you discovered this? 2 hours, Commander, 2 hours. Hana looked at the cubs sleeping peacefully against her. They had been lost and scared in a storm for 2 hours before she found them. Captain Wu Jin, Raka said, take the human to the council chamber. Wake her carefully and ensure the cubs are secured with their caretakers. We will discuss this matter in private. Several warriors moved forward. Hana felt panic rise in her throat. What's going to happen? Please, I didn't mean to break any rules. I didn't know. No one answered her. Wu Jin knelt beside the bench and reached for the smallest cub, Sola. His hands were shaking slightly. May I? He asked Hana, his voice rough. Hana nodded. Carefully, she shifted Sola into Wu Jin's arms. The cub made a sad sound and reached back toward Hana. Wu Jin's face twisted with something that looked like grief. The other 2 cubs woke up as they were moved. Tarin, the oldest, saw Hana and made a happy chirping sound. He tried to climb back to her, but another warrior gently held him. No, Tarin said in a high, clear voice. Want Hana, want warm. Hana's heart broke. It's okay, she told him. You'll be okay. Kiva started to cry. The sound was soft but desperate. Several warriors flinched at the sound. Hana saw Wujin close his eyes, his jaw tight. Take them to their quarters, Raka ordered. Quickly, the warriors carried the cubs away. All three were crying now, reaching back toward Hana. She wanted to run after them to tell them everything would be fine, but two warriors stood on either side of her. They weren't touching her, but their message was clear. She wasn't going anywhere. When the cubs were gone, Raka turned to the remaining warriors. Clear this area. Captain Wujin, Lieutenant Jihoon, Private Minho, you will come with me and the human. The rest of you, return to your posts and speak of this to no one. The warriors saluted and left. Soon only 5 of them remained in the garden. Raka, Wujin, Jihoon, Minho, and Hana. Follow, Raka said, and started walking. They led her through empty corridors. Hana's legs felt weak. She had no idea what was going to happen to her. Would they send her back to Earth? Would they cancel the diplomatic mission? Or was it worse than that? The way everyone was acting, so serious and scared, made her think she'd done something truly terrible. They entered a large room with a long table. Raka gestured for Hana to sit on one side. He sat across from her. The 3 warriors, Wujin, Jihoon, and Minho, stood behind Raka. Do you know what you have done? Raka asked. Hana shook her head. I know I broke some rule, but I don't know which one. No one told me anything about cubs or children or rules about them. I just heard crying and found them scared and alone. They are not children, Raka said. They are the royal cubs, the only surviving heirs of the ruling bloodline. Their parents died 3 months ago defending our borders. They are the most precious lives in our entire civilization. Hana felt her stomach drop. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know. Our law is ancient and absolute, Raka continued. No one outside the bloodline or appointed caretakers may touch the royal cubs. The punishment for breaking this law is death. For you and for every member of the Shadowclaw Guard who failed to prevent this contact, death. The word hung in the air like a weight. Hana looked at the 3 warriors standing behind Raka. Wujin was staring at the wall, his face blank. Jihoon's hands were clasped behind his back so tight his knuckles were white. Minho, the youngest one, looked terrified. But I didn't know, Hana said again. Her voice was shaking now. How can you punish someone for breaking a law they didn't know existed? That's not justice. It is not about justice, Raka said. It is about protecting the future of our species. By killing people who were trying to help? Hana felt anger cutting through her fear. Those cubs were lost and scared. They could have been hurt. I made sure they were safe. How is that deserving of death? You do not understand our ways. Then explain them to me. Hana slammed her hand on the table. Because from where I'm sitting, your laws seem designed to keep everyone afraid rather than actually protecting anyone. The room went silent. No one spoke to Commander Raka like that. Certainly not a human. Raka stared at her for a long moment. Then he said, Captain Wujin, tell her. Wujin stepped forward. He looked at Hana and she saw something in his eyes that shocked her. Pain. Deep, terrible pain. The cubs have been crying every night since their parents died, Wujin said. His voice was quiet. Every night for 3 months. Nothing we do helps. We have tried everything. Toys, food, comfort, presents. They cry for hours. They do not sleep well. They do not eat well. They are suffering and we cannot help them. We are warriors, Lieutenant Jihoon added. His voice was rough. We are trained to protect, to fight, to face any enemy. But we do not know how to comfort scared cubs. We were never taught. That was their parents' role. Every night I stand guard and listen to them cry, Private Minho said. He was the youngest and there were tears in his eyes. Every night I feel like I am failing them. We all do. Wujin looked at Hana directly. And then you, a stranger, an outsider, someone we were told was weak, you made them stop crying. In one night you did what we could not do in 3 months. His voice cracked on the last word. He took a shaky breath. That is why we weep, he said. Not because you broke the law, but because you showed us how badly we have failed. Hana watched as this strong warrior, this soldier who probably faced death regularly, started to cry. Tears ran down his face. Behind him, Jihoon's eyes were wet too. Even young Minho was openly crying. I do not know how to stop their pain, Wujin said. And seeing you do it so easily, so naturally, it breaks something inside me. You have shown me that all my strength means nothing when I cannot help 3 scared cubs sleep through the night. More tears fell. Woojin didn't wipe them away. He just stood there letting them fall like he was too tired to hide anymore. Hana felt her own eyes burning. She understood now. This wasn't about laws or rules. This was about warriors who had been trained their whole lives to be strong, to never show weakness, discovering that strength wasn't enough. They didn't know how to be soft. They didn't know how to give comfort, and it was destroying them. You're not failures, Hana said softly. You just need to learn a different kind of strength. Woojin looked at her. What do you mean? Being strong doesn't mean you can't be gentle, Hana said. It doesn't mean you can't show emotion or give comfort. That's not weakness. That's being complete. She stood up and looked at Commander Raka. Your cubs need more than protection. They need someone who can hold them when they're scared, someone who can make them feel safe, not just keep them from danger. Those are different things. Raka was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, And you believe you can teach us this? I can try, Hana said. If you let me. Commander Raka sat in silence for what felt like forever. Outside the window, the sun was rising, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. The High Council would arrive soon to pass judgment. By law, both Hana and the Shadowclaw Guard should be executed. But Raka was thinking about something else. He was thinking about 3 crying cubs and a human who had made them stop. The High Council arrives in 1 hour, Raka said finally. I must present them with facts and a recommendation. Captain Woojin, tell me honestly, in 3 months has anyone been able to comfort those cubs the way the human did? Woojin stood straighter, wiping the tears from his face. No, Commander. No one. Have you tried? Every method we know. We have consulted with caretakers, medical staff, and child development specialists. Nothing has worked. The cubs are traumatized. They have lost their parents and cannot be comforted. Until last night, Raka said. Until last night, Woojin agreed quietly. Raka turned to Hana. You said you heard them crying for 3 nights? Yes, Hana said. Through the ventilation system in my room. I didn't know what it was at first, just that someone sounded very sad. And you did not think to report this? Hana felt her face grow hot. I should have. I know that now. But I thought maybe it was normal. I didn't want to interfere. On the 3rd night I couldn't stand it anymore. Why? Raka leaned forward. Why did you risk leaving your quarters and wandering the palace at night? You were told not to wander alone. Hana thought about how to explain. Because I have a younger brother. When he was small, he was afraid of storms. I would sit with him until he fell asleep. When I heard those cubs crying in the storm, I didn't think about rules or risks. I just thought about my brother. I thought about how scared they must be. Lieutenant Jihoon made a soft sound. When Hana looked at him, he was staring at her with something like wonder. You have cubs of your own? Raka asked Jihoon. 3, Commander, Jihoon said. And I have never been able to comfort them the way this human comforted our royal cubs. I love my children, but I do not know how to be soft with them. I was never taught. Private Minho spoke up, his voice uncertain. My mother died when I was young. My father was a warrior like me. He did his best, but he never held me when I cried. He told me crying was weakness. I learned to stop crying, but I never stopped being scared. The room was quiet again. Hana looked at these warriors and saw something she hadn't expected. They were brave and strong, yes, but they were also hurting. A whole culture built on strength and discipline had forgotten how to be gentle. Raka stood up and walked to the window. The human has broken our most sacred law, he said. But she has also done what no one else could do. The question is, what serves the cubs better? Upholding the law or learning from someone who can help them heal? Commander, Woojin said carefully. What are you suggesting? Raka turned around. I am suggesting that perhaps our laws need to be questioned. What good is a law that punishes someone for helping? What kind of culture have we built if we train our warriors to fight, but not to comfort their own children? He looked at Hana. You said you could teach us. What would that look like? Hana took a deep breath. This was important. She needed to get this right. On Earth, we have people who specialize in childcare and development, but the basics are something everyone learns. We learn that children need physical affection, gentle touch, and emotional security. They need to know that someone cares about them, not just about keeping them safe. She paused, choosing her words carefully. I saw how Captain Woojin picked up Sola. His hands were shaking. He was afraid of hurting her, afraid of doing it wrong. That fear is what the cubs feel too. They can sense it. How do we stop being afraid? Wu Jin asked. Practice, Hana said simply, and permission to be imperfect. You're trying so hard to be perfect protectors that you've forgotten children don't need perfection. They need presence. They need someone who will sit with them in their fear and not try to fix it, just be there with them. Raka was listening carefully. And you would teach this to the Shadow Claw Guard? If you let me, yes. But there's a condition. Raka's eyes narrowed. You are not in a position to make conditions, human. Maybe not, Hana said. But I'll make it anyway. You don't execute these warriors. They didn't fail. They were set up to fail. You gave them a job they were never trained for and then blamed them when they couldn't do it. That's not their fault. Wu Jin stepped forward quickly. Do not speak to the commander this way. Our failure is our own. It's not failure. Hana turned to face him. You protected those cubs with your lives. You kept them physically safe. You just didn't know how to help them emotionally. Those are different skills, and you can learn them if someone teaches you. She looked back at Raka. So here's my condition. You let me stay and work with the cubs and the guard. You don't punish anyone for something that was honestly a failure of your system, not of individuals. And in return I'll do everything I can to help those cubs heal. And if we refuse? Raka asked. Then you execute us all and those cubs keep crying every night. Is that what you want? Is that what's best for your future rulers? The silence stretched on. Finally Raka nodded slowly. The High Council will not like this, he said. But I will present your offer. I cannot promise they will accept it. I understand, Hana said. Raka looked at Wu Jin. Captain, what is your opinion? Wu Jin didn't hesitate. I believe the human is right, Commander. We need to learn what she knows. For the cub's sake. Lieutenant Jihoon? Agreed, Commander. I would rather die having tried to learn than die knowing I never helped them. Private Minho? I want to learn, Minho said quietly. I want to know how to be strong and gentle. Like the human, Raka nodded. Then we will present this to the High Council together. But first there is something that must be done. He walked to the door and spoke to a guard outside. A few minutes later, the door opened again and 3 caretakers entered. They were carrying the cubs. All 3 cubs were crying. Not the scared crying from the storm, but the same sad, hopeless crying Hana had heard for 3 nights. The caretakers looked exhausted and helpless. They have not stopped since they were taken from you, Raka told Hana. The caretakers cannot soothe them. Taran saw Hana and immediately reached toward her, crying harder. Hana! Want Hana! Hana looked at Raka. May I? Raka gestured for the caretakers to bring the cubs forward. They placed them on the floor and all 3 immediately ran to Hana. She knelt down and opened her arms. They crashed into her, wrapping their small bodies around her, crying into her chest. Shh, Hana murmured, stroking their fur gently. I'm here. It's okay. I'm here. Slowly the crying quieted. Taran hiccuped and looked up at her with wet eyes. You left. I'm sorry, Hana said. I didn't want to leave, but I'm here now. Kiva pressed her face against Hana's shoulder. Scared, always scared. I know, sweetheart. I know. Sola, the smallest, didn't say anything. She just held onto Hana's shirt with tiny paws, shaking. Hana looked up at the warriors watching. They were all staring at the cubs with expressions of pain and wonder. This was what they had wanted to do for 3 months. This simple thing, holding scared children and making them feel safe. Watch, Hana said softly. This is the first lesson. You don't need to have all the answers. You don't need to stop them from being scared. You just need to be with them while they feel it. She adjusted Sola in her arms, making sure the tiny cub was comfortable. See how I'm holding her? Firm enough that she feels secure but gentle. My hand is on her back and I can feel her heartbeat. I'm matching my breathing to hers, slow and steady. That helps calm her down. Wu Jin was watching intensely like he was memorizing every movement. Talk to them, Hana continued. Your voice matters. Not what you say, but how you say it. Calm, gentle, consistent. It tells them that even though they're scared, you're not. You're the anchor they can hold on to. She hummed softly the same song she'd hummed in the storm. The cubs relaxed against her. This is trust, Hana said, looking at each warrior. They trust me because I'm not afraid of their emotions. I'm not trying to make them stop feeling. I'm just staying with them while they feel it. That's what they need from you. Lieutenant Jihoon wiped his eyes. We can learn this? Yes, Hana said. It might feel awkward at first. It might feel wrong, like you're being weak. But you're not. You're being brave in a different way. Private Minho knelt down beside Hana. "Can I try?" he asked, his voice uncertain. Hana smiled. "Of course. Taran, would you like Minho to hold you for a moment?" Taran looked at Minho with big, uncertain eyes. Minho looked terrified, but he held out his arms. Slowly, Hana guided Taran into Minho's hold. "Support his back," Hana instructed. "There you go. Now talk to him. Tell him he's safe." Minho swallowed hard. "You are safe, Taran. I am here. I will not let anything hurt you." His voice was stiff, formal. Taran squirmed uncomfortably. "Softer," Hana said. "Like you're talking to someone you love. Because you do love him, don't you? You've been protecting him for 3 months. That's love." Minho's expression changed. He looked down at Taran and his voice became gentler. "I am sorry I did not know how to help you. I want to learn. Will you teach me?" Taran stopped squirming. He looked up at Minho with wide eyes. Then slowly he leaned against the warrior's chest. Minho's eyes filled with tears. "He's purring," he whispered. The High Council chamber was the largest room Hana had ever seen. The ceiling disappeared into shadows, and massive pillars lined the walls. 7 elderly Velkari sat on a raised platform, their fur gray with age, their golden eyes sharp and judgmental. Hana stood in the center of the floor with the 3 cubs holding onto her hands. Behind her stood Captain Wujin, Lieutenant Jihoon, and Private Minho. Commander Raka stood to the side, ready to present the case. The head of the council, Elder Dabin, looked down at them with an expression of cold disapproval. "We have read your report, Commander Raka. You are telling us that this human violated sacred law, and yet you recommend she not be punished. Explain yourself." Raka stepped forward. His voice was strong and clear. "The human violated our law out of ignorance and compassion. She heard the royal cubs crying and helped them. What she did in one night, none of us could do in 3 months. She stopped their suffering. The law exists for a reason," another council member, Elder Soman, said sharply, "to protect the royal line from outsiders who might harm them." "Did she harm them?" Raka asked. "Look at them now, Elder. Look at their faces." The council members looked at the cubs. All 3 were calm, standing close to Hana. Taran was holding her hand and playing with her fingers. Kiva was leaning against her leg. Sola was mostly hidden behind Hana, peeking out at the scary council members. "They appear content," Elder Dabin admitted, "but that does not excuse the violation." "Then punish me," Hana said suddenly. Everyone turned to look at her. Wujin made a sound of protest, but Hana continued. "Punish me, but not them." She gestured to the warriors behind her. These soldiers spent 3 months trying to help these cubs. They protected them, watched over them, and suffered every time the cubs cried. They never gave up. They never stopped trying. The only thing they lacked was knowledge that no one taught them. "They are warriors," Elder Soman said. "Warriors do not need to know how to coddle children." "Why not?" Hana asked. The question hung in the air. Why can't warriors also be caretakers? Why can't strength and gentleness exist in the same person? "It is not our way," Elder Dabin said. "Maybe it should be," Hana replied. "I've been here less than a week, and I can already see the problem. You've built a culture that values strength above everything. But these cubs don't need strength right now. They need love. They need someone who can sit with them when they're sad and tell them it's okay to feel that way." She knelt down and put her arms around the cubs. "These 3 have lost their parents. That pain doesn't go away just because you're royal or because you're supposed to be strong. They're children. They need to grieve. They need to cry. And they need someone who won't be afraid of their tears." Elder Dabin was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You speak boldly for someone facing execution." "Because I'm right," Hana said. "And you know it. That's why you're listening instead of just ordering my death." A small smile crossed the old Velkari's face. "Bold indeed. Captain Wujin, step forward." Wujin moved to stand beside Hana. He looked straight ahead, his face blank, but Hana could see tension in his shoulders. "In 3 months, did you ever consider that you were not qualified for this duty?" Elder Dabin asked. "Every day, Elder," Wujin said quietly. "Every single day. And yet you did not request a replacement?" "No, Elder, because no one else was more qualified than I was. We are all warriors. We are all the same. Replacing me would not have helped the cubs. What has changed now?" Wujin looked at Hana. "Now we have someone who can teach us what we do not know. Someone who understands what the cubs need. If you allow it, I wish to learn from her. I wish to become someone worthy of protecting these cubs, not just their bodies but their hearts as well. Lieutenant Jihoon stepped forward. I also wish to learn, Elder. I have 3 cubs of my own, and I have failed them the same way I failed the royal cubs. I do not know how to show them I love them. I want to learn. Private Minho joined them. I am young, Elder. But I remember what it felt like to be a scared cub with no one to comfort me. I do not want these cubs to grow up feeling the same way. Please allow us to learn. Elder Soman leaned forward. And what of your dignity as warriors? What of your reputation? If word spreads that the Shadowclaw Guard is learning how to coddle children from a human, you will be mocked across the galaxy. Let them mock, Woojin said. There was steel in his voice now. I would rather be mocked and have these cubs grow up happy than be respected and watch them suffer. Jihoon nodded. Reputation means nothing if we fail in our duty, and our duty is to protect them in all ways, not just from physical danger. The council members looked at each other. Hana could see them having a silent conversation with their eyes. Finally, Elder Dabin spoke. The law is clear. The punishment for your crime, human, should be death. However, the law was written to protect the cubs from harm. You did not harm them. You helped them. Therefore, we have a problem. Do we uphold a law that no longer serves its purpose, or do we adapt? He stood up. The other council members stood with him. 3 months ago, we lost our finest warriors when the royal parents died defending our borders. Since then, we have watched these cubs suffer. We have consulted every expert in child care on our world. Nothing worked. And then you, a stranger from a species we barely know, succeeded where we all failed. Elder Dabin walked down from the platform and approached Hana. Up close, he was even more imposing, but his eyes were sad. My own cubs are grown now, he said softly, but I remember when they were small. I remember wanting to comfort them and not knowing how. I thought being strong meant never showing weakness, never being soft. I thought I was teaching them to be powerful. He paused. Instead, I taught them not to trust me with their feelings. He looked at the 3 cubs. I do not want that for these little ones. They have suffered enough. He turned to face the other council members. I propose we do not punish the human. Instead, we employ her. She will stay on Cathara Prime as a cultural advisor and teacher. She will work with the Shadowclaw Guard and any other warriors who wish to learn. We will create a new position. Emotional guardians. Warriors who protect not just bodies but spirits. Elder Soman frowned. That is a significant change to our culture. Our culture is already changing, Elder Dabin said. The galaxy is changing. We cannot remain isolated in our old ways. If we want our cubs to thrive, we must learn to be more than just warriors. After a long moment, Elder Soman nodded. One by one, the other council members agreed. Then it is decided, Elder Dabin announced. Lee Hana of Earth, you are hereby appointed as the first emotional guardian trainer of the Velkari Dominion. Captain Woojin and his unit will be your first students. Do you accept this position? Hana felt tears in her eyes. Yes, Elder, I accept. And you, Captain Woojin? Are you prepared to learn a new way of strength? Yes, Elder, Woojin said. I am ready. The next 6 months changed everything. Hana stayed in the palace in a room much closer to the cubs' quarters. Every morning she worked with Woojin, Jihoon, Minho, and the other members of the Shadowclaw Guard. She taught them about emotional needs, child development, and the importance of physical affection. It was awkward at first. Warriors who had spent their lives training to fight suddenly had to learn to give hugs, read bedtime stories, and validate feelings. They made mistakes. They were clumsy. But they kept trying. Slowly the cubs began to heal. Taran smiled more often. Kiva started playing again. Sola, the quietest of the 3, began to talk more, sharing her fears and sadness instead of keeping them inside. And the warriors changed too. Woojin learned to sit with the cubs during thunderstorms, holding them close instead of just standing guard outside their door. Jihoon started applying what he learned with his own cubs at home, and his relationship with them transformed. Minho, who had never been comforted as a child himself, cried often during the lessons but kept coming back. Word spread across Cathara Prime. Other warriors started asking if they could learn too. Parents who had raised their cubs the old way with discipline and distance wanted to know if it was too late to change. Hana held classes, wrote guides, and slowly began to shift an entire culture. Commander Rocca watched all of this with quiet satisfaction. He had taken a risk presenting the case to the council, but it had paid off. The Velkari were becoming stronger in a new way. 6 months after the night in the garden, there was a formal ceremony. Hana stood in front of the assembled Shadowclaw Guard, all 50 warriors in their formal armor. The 3 cubs stood beside her, dressed in small ceremonial robes. Terran stepped forward. He was holding a small crystal pendant, the symbol of family bonds. "Hana of Earth," he said in his clear young voice, "you came to us when we needed you most. You showed us that being strong means being kind. Today we ask you to accept the title of Second Mother." Hana knelt down and Terran placed the pendant around her neck. All 3 cubs hugged her. Behind them, the entire Shadowclaw Guard saluted. After the ceremony, Wujin approached Hana. His armor gleamed in the light, but his eyes were warm. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" Hana asked. "For showing me that I was not broken. I thought my inability to comfort them meant I was a failure as a protector. You taught me that I was just incomplete. There is a difference." "You were never a failure," Hana said. "You just needed permission."